God's games we play worth your time? Let's find out.
That Man and His Manga.
Hello and welcome to That Man, That Is Me Merchandise, and today we are once again looking at another light novel, the God's Games We Play, or God's Games We Play. Now, this was sent to me as a review copy from Yen Press in exchange for a fair and honest review, and honestly, I went into this one not really expecting much. Didn't really know much about it, and the synopsis kind of caught my eye. In their abundance of free time, the gods grew bored and decided to create challenging battles of wits to spice things up. Their opponent? Humanity. A select few players called apostles meet the gods on the spiritual realm's playing field to beat the deities at their own games. A former god named Laisha has woken after sleeping for thousands of years, and her first demand is to meet this era's very best player. She is introduced to Faye, an acclaimed rookie apostle. Together, they plan to challenge the gods and will the ultimate prize, but no one in human history has managed to clear 10 games, because the gods can be capricious, outrageous, and sometimes downright incomprehensible. In the face of absurdity, what can the apostles do but enjoy the contest to its fullest? Now, the first thing you were probably expecting after that synopsis is, wow, there's a lot of things going on with this series, and you know what? You are absolutely right to think about that, because this one was interesting in that because it has to try and have a somewhat unique world, it's got to try and put as much information to you as possible, to the point that I really felt that info dumped in the first 30 to 50 pages. And it wasn't necessarily a positive thing because of that. I kind of felt because it info dumped a lot of stuff at the very beginning, over the rest of the volume it kind of lacked for that reason. All of the narrative, all of the plot kind of gets shoved into the first bit, and then after that it's just kind of like, oh well, we're going to play some games, and that's kind of about it. So this is about a god, a dragon god, who plays games, and she ends up at the bottom of the sea, fast asleep, and wakes again thousands of years later. Now, I like that idea. More or less straight away I'm thinking, oh, she's coming to present day Japan or whatever. Gonna have all of this thing where it's like, oh, a little bit of Dragon Maid kind of thing, you know, where they're kind of having to try and get used to the normal life. Nah, they don't bother with that. It just comes back. There's not really much to this whole sleeping for thousands of years. It just comes back and just sets up games, starts playing games willy-nilly straight away, and I'm just kind of like, how do you know all of this stuff? How do you know? It kind of skirts over it. Fair enough, it's probably going to be that she invented all of these games originally, but it's kind of like, yeah, I don't know, if you're kind of going to do that, why bother? And she fights against basic McBoring face, the male protagonist, and you know what? I'm going to start mentioning other series that I kind of had hopes for this one against. So, female protagonist, oh, gambling, Kakaguri, Kaiji, Yu-Gi-Oh, other titles that have done the whole game playing and done it rather well. And this one, I don't know, it just kind of is a bit okay. So, characters. I'm not going to get too much into this one because, quite frankly, there's only two characters that are probably worth mentioning about. There's a third one, but they're kind of used as the weak character. They're not really that particularly interesting. They're kind of just done as, I kind of feel it's done more as so the main character can have a harem. Yeah, they weren't particularly interesting, but let's go on to the other characters. So, we have the Dragon God, who, I'm not going to lie, was pretty interesting. They were quite a fun character, but the problem I had was that they appear after all of these years, they fight the male character, and they join forces, and at that point, pretty much, she kind of becomes less and less relevant to the plot, to the point that I kind of couldn't really understand why they had her in there. I mean, like I said, I was kind of hoping they were going to do the whole kind of, you know, fish out of water kind of thing. This dragon god who is really good at games is on the bottom of the thing and has to work their way up. You know, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Kakaguri, Kaiji, all of them had the lowest characters. Even if they are pretty talented at what they do, they have the lowest of the low. Then they kind of work their way up to becoming really good. We don't get that. We kind of just get, oh yeah, we're going to be the best ones from the start. And yeah, it just wasn't particularly interesting. She very quickly becomes boob character number 2. And I kind of didn't like that. I kind of wish that this character was actually used as the main protagonist and the other character, the male character, being just kind of there. Because that's right, the male character is your generic character who's super good at everything, has got zero personality, but they're on a quest, so they have to be the main character. And it's kind of annoying at how he appears, he battles her, and then almost straight away she's taken to be a side character and he's bumped up to main character because for some reason there's an issue with light novels and we have to have a somewhat relatable main character who the reader can project themselves into. And that's probably my biggest issue with this particular series so far, is that the main character, the male character, he's just not interesting. Again, like Kakaguri. Kakaguri has a main male character who just isn't interesting in the slightest, quite frankly. But he's there to kind of have everybody else be goofy and ridiculous around him. He's kind of the straight fall guy to a bunch of weirdos around him. And it kind of works, but this main character just wasn't interesting. What I liked about this series, well, I actually really enjoyed the games. So the games are very much Squid Game, Kaiji, Kakaguri, over the top, ridiculous scenarios that people are going to get put into. Now, it's not death games. I didn't really kind of get any hint of, how do you call it? Like, for example, Kaiji will have a lot of despair. Squid Games, we have a lot of despair. We have a lot of characters getting killed off. They're dancing in the palms of the hands. And considering this is about the gods playing games with like the apostles and humans and stuff like that, I kind of was expecting that. I was kind of expecting the whole kind of, you know, Kaiji, Squid Game, what have you, whole scenario. But we didn't get that. But the games are still genuinely fun. Each game is against, well, it's against a giant or a god or a titan or what have you. And all of the games are quite unique. They do kind of work well in a light novel format. That is something I do need to mention, because most of the time this would be something that you would probably see visually. So we don't have the normal, you know, card games and stuff like that where you probably need to have that visual thing. But the games do work as a light novel medium, and I really did appreciate that for it. The games themselves were just really well written, and to be honest, that's what kept me going through this particular volume. It wasn't the characters, it wasn't the world around it, it was the games. And in this particular volume you do get 2 games which probably take around 50 pages each. So fortunately, I mean, this is about 200 pages for the first volume, so you are getting about half of the volume of genuinely good games which are pretty interesting. Now, you don't have, like, say, you don't have the despair, so you don't have that kind of like, oh, will they, won't they end? With the main protagonist being super good at everything, you don't really kind of have that tense feeling either. You kind of have the whole feeling, it's just like, oh, well, you know, it's a god, but it's just another stepping stone in the ladder for protagonist kun. And yeah, I kind of didn't feel what I should have about that, but it wasn't bad. The games were very well written and they were very inventive in how they came out, and they did come across well in a light novel format, which I think is quite important to talk about. So what did I not like about this series? Now, I've gone over many things, but you know what? The positives, the games, they do really outweigh the negatives, and quite frankly, I mean, at the end of the day, if you can get past generic main character, that's fine. I'm really hoping that we're going to get a lot more with the female protagonist and the other protagonists that we've seen. But like I said, it's once you're outside of the game, so like I said, half of it was about the games, the other half was kind of, we have a lot of the generic tropes in here. It did have a very big issue at the beginning of trying to info dump everything, to the point I just assumed this was like a modern day Japan, but no, it's a different world, maybe? I don't know, I couldn't really place what time period it was, and this is an issue I had with that other light novel a few weeks ago, the Bride of the Barrier Master, where I was kind of like, oh, this looks like it's going to take place in a certain period piece, but no, it's modern day Japan, and this does the same, because obviously we get like card games and stuff like that, but you're kind of expecting, oh, modern day Japan, they've got the modern day games, and it's kind of, it doesn't say Japan, it kind of just like, oh yeah, there's all these things all over the world, and it was just like, okay. I think the problem is because it info dumps so much, and it is a very hard setting to kind of place while also being very familiar. I always felt that it kind of, the series never knew what it wanted to actually do. The series so far, like I said, it introduces this character, she's a cool character, and then they kind of just sideline her for the main male character, and it is again another one of these ones, and I put it down to being volume 1. Again, much like Bride of the Barrier Master, this is volume 1, so I'm getting a sneak peek into what this series can kind of do, but it kind of feels like they try to dump so much into volume 1 for a lot of light novels, and then after that they can at least stretch their wings and kind of continue onwards. I mean, we kind of know that there's going to be about 10 or 11 battles or games with these gods, so we've got 2 in here, so I think if they kind of have 1 or 2 in each volume, that's going to kind of have us with like around 10 volumes, if not less, and I kind of hope that they do a lot with it. It's got a lot of potential, but there's just, at the moment, it was just so much of a mess. So, God's Games We Play, I like the premise, I like the idea of it, it's got a lot of issues, but you know what, I genuinely feel like this one could be something fantastic if it's given the time and effort it should be to do something well with it. I love the whole idea of a gambling light novel, or like I said, the game and light novel where they're playing games against other people in the same vein as Kakaguri or Kaiji or Yu-Gi-Oh! It has a lot of issues with its main characters. I really hope we get a little bit more interesting stuff in volume 2 onwards, and that's kind of my biggest problem. It does too much things, but it doesn't do enough to kind of make you like love it. But on the other hand, the games were very good. I'm going to kind of I might leave until 2 or 3 volumes kind of are out, and then I might kind of, if I see this in the store or something like that, I might go, oh yeah, how many games are in here, and that might kind of go off that. Something I need to point out as well is that nearly all of the visual pictures in here are etchy stuff of the girls as well, so that's probably going to give you a bit more of an idea of what they're going for with these characters. Sorry, I kind of forgot about that until the end, but like I said, I enjoyed my time with it. It just never got to the point where I was amazed by it, or I never got to the point where I was just like, oh yeah, this is just like the best thing ever. The games themselves were fantastic. Every time a game popped up, I was really enthralled by it. But then after that, there was a big lull that kind of just made the series a little bit more of an awkward pattern. Where it was just like, oh yeah, game's really good, I really enjoy these. After that, ooh, a lull. But if the series can pull its characters together, make the characters a little bit more interesting, and keep the great games going, and keep everything else, if it's not necessarily plot worthy, you know, the usual tropey stuff that we get in these series, keep that to a minimum, and you're probably going to have a really good series. Like I said, this is just volume 1. Give the authors the benefit of the doubt for volume 1s, because at the end of the day they're just getting used to the characters, they get used to things. Always tend to find once volume 2, volume 3 comes out, that's when a lot more authors get the time to shine. So at this point, I would say try it, give it your own opinion. It's not terrible, it's not anything amazing, but it has the potential to be really good. At least that's my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. And if you did enjoy this, leave a like and consider subscribing. And I'll see you over here for some more light novel content.